You're listening to Dirty Feet, a dance podcast. I'm Allison Burns. For this episode of the Dirty Feet podcast, we're going to be talking about the Ghomeshi Effect, which is a verbatim dance theater piece on sexual violence in Canada. This is premiering in January at the Gladstone in Ottawa, and it will also be presented at the Shankman Arts Centre in Orleans, also in Ottawa, in February. So the Ghomeshi Effect was a project that was instigated by Jessica Ruano, who is the creator and director of the work. And Amelia Griffin is the choreographer of the piece, who we spoke to during our first episode covering the Dark Horse Dance Project. So in this context, we're actually going to be talking to Amelia about her own work. So we're going to get a different perspective there. So first of all, I'm going to say hello, Jessica. Hello, Amelia. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Allison.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
Wonderful to have you back, Amelia. And it's great to have you, Jessica. Let's take a quick moment to talk about your backgrounds as artists. So Jessica, you have a master's of theater theory and dramaturgy.
It's a mouthful, I know.
My goodness. And you've been working in Ottawa for quite a while, but you've also presented work abroad. Can you tell us a little bit about the places that you've presented?
Sure thing. So when I was working in Ottawa during university and shortly afterwards, I was mainly focused on arts journalism and marketing. So I worked for a few different companies promoting their work, and I also did theater reviews and some event organizing. But I think I realized at some point that I really wanted to create my own work. And that's sometimes difficult to do when you've been in a city for a long time and people know you in a certain way. And so I decided to try moving to London, England, because, you know, the theater scene is amazing there, and I wanted to learn from the artists there and try to reinvent myself. So I moved to London somewhat spontaneously, and when I got there, I just told everybody I was a theater director, and then I was one. And I joined a company, started producing with them, and then eventually directed my own work. And the first play I directed in England was called Sappho in 9 Fragments, about the ancient Greek poet. And I realized that I really enjoy physical theater pieces with potential for movement and interaction and really using the space, which is why I'm very drawn to doing this play as well, which involves choreography. And then I moved back to Ottawa just this past year. And I think since I've been back, there's been so much discussion around sexual violence and how it affects people on a long-term basis, and how when we try to engage with these systems, how they don't always work in the way that we expect. So this was why I wanted to embark on this project.
You've also got a history with the Fringe Festival, and I'm bringing this up because we've done a lot of Fringe Festival coverage on Dirty Feet, and you've actually been to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which is
that's right,
very
with
exciting.
the same show, Sappho in 9 Fragments,
and that's
presented in London originally, came to Canada. We were at the Ottawa Fringe Festival, and then we also went to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. We had a short run there, but it was chaotic, as Edinburgh, I think, is wont to be, and it was a really, really great learning experience.
And you also wrote a thesis about touring shows, yes?
Yeah, I did. That was part of my master's, and it was just an excuse to travel across Canada, really. I just thought, oh, yay, this is my excuse to go and speak to amazing theater creators and go see festivals. So I went from Vancouver all the way back to Toronto and got to write about some amazing companies doing work across Canada.
Can you tell us the most surprising thing that you learned doing that?
Oh, yeah, good question. I think that this is kind of what my thesis was about, but sort of how much marketing can actually influence the way that theater is being created. That sort of was what my conclusion was in the end, is that the way that we talk about our work actually affects the way that people understand it in the viewing of it. So I feel like the conversations that we have around a production, it's not just going to see a play, it's about, you know, the images you see beforehand and the conversations you have on the radio and the way that you interact with your audience before and after the show. All of that really counts towards like the full experience of theater. And so that to me was something that I've taken with me in continuing to create work. And that's going to be important for this conversation we're going to have, because you've been doing some very interesting things in terms of marketing the Ghomeshi Effect. And I'm sure that's going to
as you're theorizing, it's going to change how people react to the production itself.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in a sense, maybe it sounds weird to some artists, but for me, marketing is actually part of the directorial concept. For me, it's very much intertwined.
So in terms of your history of creation, is this the first time that you're collaborating with a choreographer on a physical theater piece?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes.
So new territory.
Yes, because as much as I enjoy working with movement, I realize that my experience is limited in that. And for this piece, I wanted the choreography to really have, to be front and center of the piece. And I'd seen Amelia's work and loved it. And I knew that she'd be a good person to bring on board for this project.
Transitioning to Amelia Griffin,
Hey.
who is a choreographer and performer, and you've been a very active performer here in Ottawa for a while now, dancing for Tara Lou's Dance, who we've covered in our episodes with Amanda Bond and our episode with Annick Bouvret.
My buddies.
Yes. And also with Propeller Dance, the Integrated Contemporary Dance Company, and with Dorsal Dance, run by Sylvie Desrossiers. Yep. And you've been creating your own work, so you've been very busy in the dance industry.
A little bit.
Yeah. What is your history of choreographic creation?
Well, I mean, I would say, as you mentioned, I've been creating and performing, but I would say that the majority of my artistic practice has been performing or more performative in nature. So my history is predominantly in self-choreographed solos. So the first one that I did out of school was actually my graduating year solo that got picked up by this show that was happening, Choreographe d'ici, at La Nouvelle Scène, way back in 2006 or something like that. So I presented that there, and I went away to Montreal for a while with big dance dreams and kept getting injured. And so while I was there, I kept coming back to Ottawa to do work with folks that really supported wherever I was at, and that includes Annick Bouvret, and that includes Sylvie.
I wish Big Dance Dreams was the name of a company.
Well, we can do this, Allison.
Yes.
The future is endless.
2017.
Hey, we're gonna do it. So when I actually made the decision to come back here, one of the first things I did was present a self-choreographed solo, and it was sort of the start of me digging into my experience as a woman in this world. It was based around my experience of miscarriage. And that had a really big impact and got me contacted and connected to a lot of really good folks here in Ottawa. And then I wanted to give myself time to work on different iterations of this project called Feelers, which is actually where Jessica saw my choreography. But it's had 3 iterations, and the first one was with Kay Kenny and Catherine Ng and Jeff Dollar and Melissa Roy, who dances for Tara Lou's Dance. So a nice little cast. And that was really broche à foin, like we say. And connected to just a gallery opening in a Guerrilla magazine, which is a underground arts and culture magazine, which was really awesome, and that may it rest in peace because it was wonderful. But it was for that launch, and then the next iteration I actually did for Dark Horse Dance Projects, and then the third part I did as a 30-minute piece as a part of Tactics. Independent, wow, you can really speak better to this because Jessica was in marketing for Tactics, but independent theater series here in Ottawa. So yeah, I would say that once I came back to Ottawa, it sort of gave me the time and space to dig into issues that really affect me personally and how to navigate putting that real shit on stage. Because Feelers was really about my experience and the performers, because we did work quite a lot in collaboration, of street harassment and sexual harassment in public spaces. And again, that's where Jessica saw my work. So I've definitely had more performative work than choreographic work. So it really means a lot to me to dig into a bigger project.
And this would be your first collaboration in this realm of theater.
Yeah. And so, Feelers was really what I see as dance theater. But then this is sort of more, it's dance theater, but it's work. Yeah, it has a script, and first time working with a theater director in this way. So it's really exciting for me.
In speaking about your work, we've also understood that you have a personal connection to the kind of concept of this work. So let's talk about the title, and let's dive right into what is going on with the Ghomeshi Effect, what the Ghomeshi Effect is, and how you're approaching it with the piece.
I'll say a little something because its inception was really through Jessica, but how she was approaching it and what the nature of it really spoke to me. So, and I think it's noting that the Jian Ghomeshi trial was a really stark moment in our Canadian history of understanding that perhaps our justice system doesn't support survivors adequately. And that's, also an opinion. But I think when I was observing all of that, I was really... I felt really let down. I myself, as a survivor, felt like it was something needed to be done. And I think also from that point and from that trial, one sort of benefit of that was that people actually started talking about sexual violence online, on the street, with their families. It just opened up this huge capacity for conversation. And my reason to really go along with Jessica on this is also because I really, not just, it would be great to make a piece with a theater director, but I really do believe in continuing that conversation, and not necessarily always from my point of view. Like, I want to talk to people about sexual violence, and the more we talk about it, the more it's out there, and the more that people can be supported, and we can perhaps try to change how our justice system works so that it's lives up to the justice part of that. But that's all I'm going to say for the time. I'm going to say it for kind of.
I think it might be appropriate, just for that one listener who's been living under a rock, to just point out that Jian Ghomeshi was the host of CBC's Q and was accused of
sexually assaulting multiple people.
Yes. And there was something like 14 different people coming forward. 19 people came out of the woodwork. He lost his job. He went to trial, and he was found not guilty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. He was found, there were two trials. Well, there were supposed to be two trials. The first one, 3 women were put on the stand, and in that trial, he was found not guilty. The reason giving that the judge felt that the witnesses, as in the women who came forward, were not reliable witnesses. That was his perspective. And the second trial that was supposed to happen actually ended with a peace bond. So Jian Ghomeshi apologized for wrongdoing without admitting guilt. It's an interesting little, I don't know if we can call it a loophole in the legal system, but it's one way that you can avoid having a trial. And that the person who feels they've who's been the victim, or feels they're the victim of a crime, can at least receive an apology. But and I think he has to stay away from her for a year. There's a restraining order, but otherwise no punishment was given beyond that. So it's been very interesting to talk about the legal system in the sense of, whether or not people feel he committed these crimes. That's on one side. And then the other side is the credibility of witnesses and how that affects the outcome of a trial. So it could be said that, yes, he committed these crimes, but the witnesses weren't considered credible. And so he gets off even though it's possible that he was guilty. Do you know what I mean? Or I can't say guilty because that's a legal term, but that he committed these crimes. So it kind of begs the question of, if that's the case, then how do we feel about the outcome of these trials if they don't actually reflect the reality of the situation? And these are questions that we explore in the text quite a lot, because we spoke to a lot of people who have engaged with the justice system and have received a variety of results based on that.
And something that's come out of this too is just how many sexual assaults just go unreported because of the re-traumatization of the trial process.
And I think it's important for us to really delineate and be really clear with the fact that we aren't really interested in talking about Jian Ghomeshi, because that trial happened, and what we really see is that trial happened. People woke up to the fact that maybe the justice system isn't doing what they feel that they would need from that. And because Jian Ghomeshi was a celebrity, it kind of got, it got covered by media and it became clear. But what we're really interested in talking about is the effects of that trial. And I think that's a really important thing for us to note, that the Ghomeshi Effect was actually coined by the media and different news outlets, describing this phenomena of survivors and just non-survivors coming forward to open up this conversation and to talk about sexual violence on a larger scale. And for us, we saw hashtags like "Been Raped, Never Reported," hashtag "We Believe Survivors."
Safer Campus Now.
Safer Campus Now, exactly. Jessica's all good with the hashtags and her marketingness. But so we really, what we're focusing on was, okay, well, if this happened on a larger scale, then there must be endless stories all around us. And if you look at the statistics, there's just it's rampant in our culture, different iterations of sexual violence. And so what we wanted to do was interview folks who, from all different walks of life, from intersecting communities, from people who are in the justice system, work in the justice system, from people who are survivors, for people who don't believe that rape culture exists, to just really a broad understanding, to sort of mirror or give space for that conversation to come onto the stage. And so we didn't write anything in the script. It all comes from, as verbatim implies, it all comes from stories from real folks.
And part of the reason that we wanted to take that approach is that we recognize that we have, or each of us, have a perspective on these issues, and that, we are women, we are white, we live in Canada, we have a certain perspective based on our environment and our circumstances. And we believe that sexual violence doesn't just happen to one kind of person, it happens to all kinds of people, men, women, people who don't belong to the gender binary, and from all different cultural backgrounds. And so we tried to, spread ourselves to be able to have all different voices and perspectives on this subject. So to make our show as encompassing as possible.
Right. So let's talk about the process of putting this together. So where do you source these interviews, and where do you go from there, from getting them to making a production?
Well, right after the Ghomeshi verdict came out, I figured that would be a good time to start interviewing people because it was something everybody wanted to talk about. And so I just posted on Facebook saying that I was starting this project, and anybody who wanted to talk to me was welcome to get in contact. So there were certain people who I knew would have interesting things to say, and I contacted them directly. But for the most part, people got in contact with me and just said, I have a story I want to share. Can we get together and talk? Or some people recommended friends of theirs who might want to talk to me. So I actually met some people through this process, met some amazing people who I'm now, quite in contact with, which is fantastic. And what I would do generally is I would say, even if I didn't know them, I would say, this is my address, come over. We would sit on my sofa. We would have tea and cookies. And then we would just start chatting. And eventually I would say, can I record now? And if they said yes, I would press record on my computer and I would record our exchange. And I tried to speak as little as possible. I would just ask a question here or there, but mostly I encourage people just to just to talk. As much as they wanted, they were allowed to ramble, they were allowed to monologue, because sometimes the most interesting ideas come when you're not, planning too much and you're not giving short answers. You're letting yourself develop ideas. And there were some amazing stories that came out of that. So the script became both anecdotal and informative and sort of a dialogue. There's some parts that are quite catchy that are just like ideas being thrown out there. So it's quite diverse in that way. And so I interviewed 40 people over the course of a few months. And most of the interviews are in the script, at least in part. And so it was difficult trying to trim it down because there were so many amazing stories that I couldn't include just because, we can't have a play that's 4 hours long. And so we would love maybe a second iteration. We'll see. But just for the actors, I think that might be a little bit hard to be dancing and doing all this. But yeah, so we kind of, and Amelia was instrumental in this and looking at the interviews and seeing, okay, well, like, what do we want to include? What's a priority? Is there a good narrative arc going on here? Is it engaging? All that kind of stuff. And then we also discussed sort of design ideas and movement ideas. And while I was working on the script, Amelia was working with the performers on movement ideas and just sort of getting certain movements into their bodies. And so we did a workshop weekend that focused on that. And so we've kind of been doing the movement and the text concurrently through this whole process, with the workshop weekend in July and then with some workshopping style rehearsals over the last few months. We just meet like a couple of times a week with some of the actors and work on things. And then we start into the serious rehearsals in January.
And let's talk for a second about this cast. You've got 6 cast members.
They're so beautiful. Like when we had the auditions, we're so lucky. We are so lucky.
I really do have to just note that, like, when you see someone on stage and you just can't take your eyes off them and they're just wholly engaging and you just want to be, all of the cast members are like that. And we're blown away by even just, the responsive folks who wanted to come to the rehearsal, to the auditions. So anyway, I just had to say that because
we could have cast the play twice, really, but we're super happy with the people that we got.
And there's a variety of backgrounds here in terms of movement information. There's a lot of theater training, and there's even some, again, like personal connections to kind of being proactive about women's rights.
Absolutely. Yeah, many of our members have been involved in organizations. One of them worked for a rape crisis center. A lot of them found work in this. And so we try to engage people for whom this was somewhat personal because of the level of engagement in this show. It's not just putting on a play. Like, we've invited them to take part in community events, to do their own research, to share with us if they want to share their stories. Like, that's all very much part of this process. We've also gone into high schools to speak to students because we feel like this is a conversation that needs to happen early on and that high school students have a lot to say on this subject. So it was great to have actors who had a personal connection, so they were willing to engage on this level.
And I think it's something to be said too, is that they're all actors who are extremely sensitive to the subject matter, but also very mature in how to handle and work with other people's stories that are from real people. And I think that's our process has really been, so I'm also a yoga therapist, and so part of my brain was also, how do we make these rehearsals non-traumatic? And how do we invite a way to work that's supportive, co-supportive environment, so that when we do come to parts that are, because there were at the beginning some moments when the script was coming together where it's just, we're all just sat there in silence. Because what do you say? When you're hearing someone's story for the first time, and Jessica and I had seen them, but, when you give it to the cast, and so there's definitely was a lot of opportunity to talk through things and figure out how to best approach the sensitive nature of this work. And I think that's just something that I really appreciate with working with actors as well, folks who aren't necessarily movement-based, except for Leah Archambault, is how to bring that sensitivity, bring that emotion, and bring that real connection to other humans into the body. And that's where we can work through things concurrently to the text.
Cool. So we've got Leah's name on record. Let's give a shout out to the other performers.
Yeah. So we also have Marc-André Charette, who has been active for a long time in French theater over in Gatineau. He's incredible. He actually did a piece with Lana Morton, who's one of the Ottawa Dance Directive chicas. What's up? Lana Morton. And that's where I first saw him. So he's an incredible mover and is very used to mixing dance and movement. We have Annie Lefebvre, who's also from the French theater land. And I actually know her from when she was doing the hosting of Dust Dances for Ottawa, and was just so hilarious. And we got along really well. But that's my personal connection. She's also an incredible actor in the city. We have Léa Archambault, who's done quite a bit of dancing, contemporary dance, and is also part of punk rock, like screamy, like I think her band was called UTI. Just amazing, amazing, feminist screamer. So we love that. There's also Emmanuel Jean-Simon, who's a local and wonderful jazz singer and just a very deep soul, and also worked with Jessica on, what was it?
We worked together in a play 10 years ago called Québécité, which was, bilingual, multicultural jazz romance with spoken word. Yeah. So that's how I actually picked him up when he was working at the Gap and was like, "Hey, do you want to be in a play?" And he was great. So it was a pleasure to have him audition again this time. We also have Gabrielle Lalonde, who I've seen for years working in Ottawa, both on the French and English side. Most recently, she's been doing work with the Ottawa Stilt Union and does amazing work, usually in parks or events across Ottawa. And was also in shows at La Nouvelle Scène recently. And then we also have Mekdes Teshome, who I saw over the summer in a Company of Fools show, Pericles. Thought she was amazing, and picked her up for the cast.
Also, I just think it's worthy to note that she's Ottawa's first Black Juliet. And that's amazing. Yes. And that was also at the Gladstone. She did a fantastic job. So everyone's just like super powerhouse, folks.
So let's talk about some of this cast engagement projects. The one I'm thinking of is the interviews over by the bridge in Somerset.
Oh yeah, that's right. We made a video. That was so much fun. We were planning to go to the market, and then we're like, oh, people are talking to us on the bridge. Let's just stay here. It's a beautiful environment. So
you want to describe what the project was?
Yeah, basically we wanted to go around and say to people, what is the Ghomeshi Effect? And just see what they said. And most people had some pretty decent answers. So as you can see in the video, people had plenty to say on the subject. And that also, if you're listening carefully, the opinions or the statements are quite mixed. Some people are like, what is it? I think the one guy's like, well, everybody agrees on that. And then the other woman's like, oh, so divisive. And then it was, so it's kind of all over the place, which I think is kind of fun. So I like that it was, that it kind of, I think, proved our point in a sense that the Ghomeshi Effect is something that everybody has a different opinion about what it actually is.
You can see this video on the GhomeshiEffect.com. It's Leah going around and asking people what is the Ghomeshi Effect.
And Mekdes as well. Yeah, the two of them.
We're kind of circling back towards marketing and the title of the show being a really engaging thing that people have a reaction to, which in the Twitterverse has led to what mean tweets, basically. And you decided to capitalize
we got
on
several hundred mean tweets. Yes.
Can you describe what you brilliantly did with all this negativity being thrown at the Ghomeshi Effect?
Well, it was one of those things where it came to me by surprise. I actually got a call from Counselor Catherine McKenney's office manager, and she said, "Have you checked Twitter today?" And I said, "No." And because they'd also been copied on quite a few of them, because we went to visit Catherine McKenney to talk about our project and took a lovely photo with her and put it on Twitter, and it was all very wonderful and supportive. And also I'd recently applied for a grant and had mentioned that online. They're like, oh, yeah, I'm finished my grant for the show. And several people all at once started posting about it and saying, how dare these people get taxpayers' money for funding their defamation project? Because from their perspective, using the title that we chose, they believed that we were, basically libelous against Jian Ghomeshi. Again, I've argued this plenty of times that I feel that we are reflecting a phenomenon that already exists in the media, and we are using the title because people know, like, if you say the title, people know what the show's about, and that's kind of the point of a title. And I kind of racked my brain for different titles that we could use, and this one just seemed the most topical, the most appropriate, and the most engaging, and the most straight to the point. So that's why we chose it. But yes, there are several people who were very adamant that he was not guilty of any crimes. Again, besides the point, but that's where they were coming from, and therefore believed that our show was created to be, basically that we were out to get him. And so they came to a lot of conclusions about that very quickly and made a lot of assumptions. And although we tried to engage peaceably with them and try to, explain things from our point of view, they didn't seem to listen. And they were very intent on, spreading rumors about me, saying that I was spending the money on going on holidays. They made memes about me. They were like using past tweets I'd written and twisted them around to make me seem like a certain kind of person. And and it was overwhelming. There was no one tweet that was particularly offensive to me. Well, I guess I can name a couple, but it was the sheer number of them. I was getting them every single day, both on my personal account and on the Ghomeshi Effect Twitter account. And I think it was a little bit heartbreaking to think that we were putting all this work into this project that we really believe in, and that people were so adamantly against it. And so we thought, let's talk about this. Let's bring what's happening to us to the forefront and create an event wherein we actually read aloud many of the tweets we've received and make it into a fundraiser, because, that's always useful when you're putting on a show. And so they did tell us to fundraise, actually. They're like, you shouldn't be getting grants. You should fundraise on your own. And I'm like, that's a brilliant idea. Thank you for that. And so we organized an event at the Gladstone, and we had some wonderful actors from the community play the roles of the trolls, as we call them, and sometimes they played themselves if they got engaged in the conversation. And then we had a nice back and forth, and we had a discussion afterwards with Hollaback Ottawa, which is a fantastic group that works to use online technology to battle street harassment and more recently online harassment. And so we had a great chat with them and sort of like discussed possible solutions, ideas, safe places, and it was just a really great way of getting it out there. And then we also made, as you can see on our website, a Mean Tweets video where we had some of our actors reading aloud some of the tweets we received along the lines of the Jimmy Kimmel stunt that he does. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to do, and it was a way of us just making lemonade out of lemons.
So we've spoken about how the work got put together and how the work's being promoted. Let's talk about what we can expect to see as an audience member walking into the Gladstone or the Shankman Arts Centre next year.
So we're at a point right now where, we mentioned we had the workshop weekend, which for me was really a time to have the actors, or, and predominantly most of them are text-based, with a little bit of movement. But I needed them to understand how I function, or how a contemporary choreography gets made. And it was really trying to engage them through their own creativity and, as Jessica mentioned, through some of the words that were going to be used in the play. So generating movement together, and having them understand my world a little bit better. And then through the fall, as there were the workshops, or workshop style rehearsals, I was able to create a little bit more of the movement material, or, look at what was already being built in the text and figure out with Jessica and with the actors, like what requires many people on stage, what requires just one person on stage, and just sort of framing it like that. And then recent rehearsals, we've, blocked the show and put in that movement, put in those duets, trios. I guess what you can expect to see is where text and movement exist in equal measure on stage. So what we're really trying to do is find that equality of both the visceral and of the body-based conversation, as well as the text continuing the narrative forward. And I think what's something that we haven't quite said yet, and something that's really important for me to mention, is how trauma, and maybe I did mention it earlier, but how trauma is inherently a part of all of this work. And obviously a huge part of sexual violence. And I think what was really hard for me in my conversations after the Ghomeshi trial was, well, trauma has no specific way of presenting itself. And so anyone who might come to trial, it's really hard to anticipate or expect a survivor to act a certain way, given that they're in a post-traumatic situation. And while an experience will happen to, your mind, it'll also happen to your body. And how do we, I guess part of what I see as my work is how to represent both trauma, the effects of trauma in this play, and of these folks, or not. And how do we use plurality? How do we use a lot of folks on stage? How do we use a minimal amount of space to really get that sense of maybe being alone, or maybe how the crowd can turn against you, or how, these sort of representing what happens in our online and in-face conversations through the movement material.
I think, it's difficult to say what an audience will experience because it'll be different for every individual. But I've seen work like this where movement and text are combined. And I found that as an audience member, often the text would speak to me intellectually and emotionally, but the movement would kind of get to me viscerally. And I think, especially when we're doing a show about sexual violence, it's so appropriate in a way to make this a piece that has movement and choreography, because it's so much about the body and how it affects the body and how the body responds to these things. And so I think that people may be surprised by their reactions to this, and that it's really interesting to see how, when we're developing the movement, how it can complement the text, how it can contradict it, how it can give you a different perspective without actually using words. I think that the combination of these things is tremendously effective, and we're still creating the show, so I'm curious myself to see where it's going to go.
Yeah. And I think I just, on top of that, want to note that when Jessica first came to engage me with this project, our common place, and where we keep sort of referring back to as, I want to use, sort of inspiration, I suppose, is a Deviate physical theater company in the UK, which we're both really deeply, deeply in love with, and in love with their work. And so this is sort of our way of creating that style of show for Canada and for a Canadian story.
That is definitely worth a Google. There's some videos out there.
Google them. Deviate with a D and then a V and then the number 8.
We're about ready to wrap it up. If you want to learn more information about the Ghomeshi Effect, thegomeshieffect.com is a primary resource. They're also on @Ghomeshi Effect on Twitter. You can look them up on Facebook as well, the Ghomeshi Effect. Instagram, you got it covered.
We're everywhere.
Thank you so much. I've been speaking with Amelia Griffin and Jessica Ruano from the Ghomeshi Effect, which is opening in Ottawa at the Gladstone Theatre in January, and also being presented at the Shankman Arts Centre in February. And then we'll see. Any final words?
I just want to say, thank you to you for having us here. And, obviously this is part of continuing the conversation. So we really appreciate any folks who are reaching out and really airing out these topics, because I think that's a way to help move things forward in a positive way. And just in general, thanks to everyone who's been involved in this project, because it's bigger than us, really. And we hope that, we just hope that what we're doing with it really gets people thinking, questioning, and coming together in support of one another.
Yeah, I think also, I know that some people who I've shared the script with, I belong to a playwrights group, and we've taken some scenes into high schools, and they've said things like, oh, I wasn't sure if I would, enjoy this because of the heavy subject matter, or I thought it might be traumatizing, or things like that. But they said that the way that we present the work and the way that it's expressed in the text and the movement actually makes it incredibly engaging. And I would just say, if you have those reservations, feel free to contact us directly. We're very happy to talk about it, to show you pieces of the script in advance if you have any, concerns about that. And I'd say just give it a chance, because I think it'll surprise you.
You've been listening to Dirty Feet. I'm Alison Burns with a few thank yous. First to Paula Flalo and the No More Radio Network. Also to Mainline Theatre and Montreal Improv Theatre, and to all present and past team members who can be found on our website, dirtyfeetpodcast.com. You can also find us on Facebook at Dirty Feet Podcast, and follow us on Twitter at Dirty Dirty Feet. Thank you for listening. Until next time.